Hi and welcome. I'm Midnight Truth, and it's so nice to have you here tonight. Wherever you are right now, whether you're in bed, lying on the couch, or just looking for a quiet moment, I want you to know this time is for you. Take a deep breath in, and as you breathe out, feel the weight of the day start to fade. Let your mind settle, let your body relax, and let yourself simply be. There's no rush, no pressure, just this calm, quiet moment. If you'd like, you can close your eyes and imagine yourself in a peaceful place. Maybe it's a cozy room with soft, warm lighting. Or maybe it's under a starry sky with a gentle breeze brushing against you. Wherever you feel safe and calm, let yourself drift there. I know many of you use these stories to fall asleep, so before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time is it there? Tonight's story is gentle and soothing, perfect to carry you into a deep, restful sleep. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin. A fresh start in a new town. I never thought I'd end up here, in this quiet little town where the streets all seem to curve back on themselves like tangled vines. But after the divorce, after everything fell apart, I needed a clean break. This house, this old, creaky thing with its crooked shutters and uneven porch steps, was the best deal I could find. It wasn't much, but it was mine. At least, that's what I told myself as I lugged my last box through the front door. The real estate agent had been oddly vague about the history of the place. "It's got character," she said with a tight smile, "and plenty of charm." She didn't mention the way the floorboards groaned underfoot or how the air smelled faintly of damp wood, and something else I couldn't quite place. Maybe it was just the scent of age, of years settling into the walls like dust in forgotten corners. Still, I liked the idea of starting over somewhere new, somewhere untouched by memories of my past life. My first few days were spent unpacking, rearranging furniture, and trying to make the place feel like home. The kitchen cabinets stuck when you opened them too quickly, and the hallway light flickered unless you tapped the fixture just right. Nothing too unusual for an older house, I told myself. And the sounds, the occasional creak from the upstairs hallway, the distant hum of pipes settling, weren't anything to worry about. Every house made noises, right? Still, there was something about the place that unsettled me. Not enough to keep me awake at night. Not yet, but enough that I found myself pausing more often than usual, listening. Just listening. Sometimes, late at night, I thought I heard footsteps above me, slow and deliberate, like someone pacing across the attic floor. But the attic had no floorboards, just bare beams and insulation. No one could be walking up there. By the end of the week, I had settled into a routine. Wake up, make coffee, check my email, try to ignore the way the cold seeped through the bedroom walls, even with the heater running. Life was simple again, or at least simpler than it had been. And yet, as I drifted off to sleep each night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. A neighbor's warning. I met Mrs. Langley on my second day in town, when I ventured out to grab groceries and stumbled upon her tending to the roses in her front yard. She was an older woman, her silver hair pulled back into a neat bun, and her sharp eyes studied me with polite curiosity as I approached. "You must be the new tenant at 317, she said before I could introduce myself. "That house has seen its share of people come and go." I chuckled nervously, unsure how to respond. "Well, I'm hoping to stick around for a while." She gave me a thin smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "We'll see," she murmured, plucking a dead leaf from one of her bushes. Then, after a pause, she added, "You know, the previous renters left rather suddenly." "Oh," I asked, forcing casual indifference. Mrs. Langley nodded. "A young couple. Moved in last spring. Seemed nice enough. But then, one night, they packed their things and left without so much as a word. Left half their furniture behind." I frowned. "Did they say why?" She shook her head. "No one ever got a straight answer. Some folks say they heard screaming in the middle of the night. Others claim the husband ran out barefoot, babbling about shadows that weren't supposed to be there." She glanced toward my house, her expression unreadable. "People around here don't talk about it much." I laughed, though it sounded hollow even to my own ears. "Sounds like a ghost story." Mrs. Langley didn't laugh. Instead, she merely said, "Maybe, or maybe not." Then she turned back to her roses, leaving me standing there, suddenly aware of the chill creeping down my spine. Whispers in the dark. At first, I dismissed the strange occurrences as nothing more than the house settling. After all, old homes have a way of making themselves known. Creaking floorboards, shifting beams, the occasional draft slipping through unseen cracks. But as the night stretched on, the disturbances grew harder to ignore. It started with the footsteps. Late at night, just as I was drifting off to sleep, I would hear them, slow, deliberate, padding softly across the upstairs hallway. My bedroom was on the first floor, and the only room upstairs was a small storage space filled with dusty boxes and forgotten belongings from previous tenants. There was no reason for anyone to be walking up there. And yet, every night, the sound came again. At first, I convinced myself it was just the house cooling down, the wood contracting as the temperature dropped. But then the footsteps stopped being random. They followed a pattern, back and forth, always the same route, always ending in silence. Then there were the whispers, faint, unintelligible murmurs that seemed to drift in from nowhere, curling around the edges of my consciousness just before I fell asleep. I would wake up gasping, heart pounding, unable to recall what I had heard, only that it had felt wrong, like something foreign pressing against the inside of my skull. Cold spots became another unwelcome addition to my nightly routine. One moment, I would be lying comfortably beneath my blanket, and the next, a wave of icy air would sweep over me, raising goosebumps along my skin. It never lasted long, just a few seconds, but it was enough to leave me shivering and wide awake, staring into the darkness, waiting for whatever had passed through my room to reveal itself. I tried to rationalize it all. The house was old, yes, but maybe it was haunted by nothing more than memory and imagination. Still, each night brought something new. A door creaking open when there was no wind, the sensation of being watched even when I was alone, the faint outline of a figure reflected in my mirror when I knew I hadn't moved. And then, one night, I heard the voice. It was soft, almost gentle, whispering my name from somewhere deep within the house. I sat bolt upright in bed, pulse hammering in my ears, convinced I had imagined it. But the whisper came again, clearer this time, closer. I wasn't imagining this. Something was in the house with me. Echoes of the past. Determined to understand what was happening, I threw myself into researching the house's history. If there was a logical explanation, if something in the past could account for the footsteps, the whispers, the unnatural cold, I was going to find it. I started with the Public Records Office, flipping through brittle documents and faded property listings. Most of the information was mundane: previous owners, renovation permits, tax assessments. But buried within the stacks was something far more unsettling. An old newspaper clipping, yellowed with age, detailed the original owner of the house, Elias Whitmore. According to the article, he had built the house in the early 1900s, a recluse who rarely interacted with the townspeople. Rumors swirled around him, whispers of midnight gatherings, strange symbols carved into the trees surrounding his property, and the eerie glow of candlelight flickering behind drawn curtains long after dark. Curiosity drove me to dig deeper. I visited the local library, scanning microfilm reels for any mention of Whitmore. What I found chilled me. Over the years, multiple reports surfaced about missing persons in the area, some linked to Whitmore's land. People claimed to hear chanting coming from his house late at night, voices rising in a language no one recognized. Some believed he practiced occult rituals, summoning forces beyond human comprehension. The final record I uncovered was the most disturbing, an obituary dated nearly a century ago. Elias Whitmore had died in his home, alone, though the cause of death was listed only as undetermined. Armed with this knowledge, I returned to the house, determined to search for any remnants of Whitmore's presence. I scoured the attic, where dust-covered trunks and broken furniture lay abandoned. That was where I found it, a leather-bound journal, its pages brittle and ink faded but still legible. As I flipped through it, my breath caught in my throat. Whitmore had written extensively about his beliefs, detailing elaborate rituals meant to open a gateway to something he called the Veil. He spoke of spirits lingering between worlds, of voices that whispered secrets in the dark, of figures that watched from the corners of rooms. His final entry was the most disturbing of all. Tonight, I will complete the rite. The door is opening. Something waits beyond. I slammed the journal shut, heart pounding. Whatever Whitmore had summoned, whatever he had let into this house, it had never left. Shadows in the walls, I should have left the house the moment I read those words. Hell, I should have run the second I heard that whisper calling my name. But I didn't. I stayed. Because part of me wanted answers. Needed to know if what I was experiencing was real or if my mind was playing cruel tricks on me. But now, knowing what I did about Elias Whitmore, the house felt different. Oppressive. Like something unseen was watching me, waiting. The whispers became more frequent, slithering through the air like smoke, curling around my thoughts even when I was awake. I would catch glimpses of movement from the corner of my eye, shadows stretching unnaturally across the walls, vanishing the moment I turned to look. One night, I woke to the sound of breathing. Slow, wet, labored. It wasn't mine. I lay perfectly still, heart hammering, listening. The sound came from beside me, just inches away. I dared to glance toward the edge of the bed and froze. A figure stood there, barely visible in the dim moonlight filtering through the window. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs twisted at unnatural angles. Its face was obscured in shadow, but I could feel its gaze locked onto me, heavy and unblinking. I scrambled backward, nearly falling off the bed in my panic. When I looked again, the figure was gone. Only the lingering scent of decay remained. The cold spots intensified. They weren't just passing chills anymore. They were bone-deep, numbing, as if the very air around me had turned hostile. Doors slammed shut on their own. Locks clicked from the inside. And once, I walked into the kitchen to find a trail of muddy footprints leading from the front door to the hallway, disappearing into the darkness. The worst was the voice. It called to me constantly now, sometimes coaxing, sometimes demanding. It knew my name, knew my fears. It whispered promises in the dead of night, telling me that if I just listened, if I just obeyed, it would stop. But I knew better. It would never stop. And then, one night, I heard something new. Footsteps, close, deliberate, coming down the hallway, toward my room. I gripped the sheets, paralyzed with fear. The doorknob rattled. The door opens. The doorknob rattled again, harder this time, as if something, or someone, on the other side was testing its strength. My breath hitched in my throat, every muscle in my body locking in place. I stared at the door, willing it to stay closed, willing the sound to stop. But it didn't. The rattling continued, accompanied now by a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the air like a distant thunderstorm. I reached for the lamp on my nightstand, fumbling in the darkness until my fingers found the switch. The moment the light flickered on, the noise stopped. Silence pressed in around me, thick and suffocating. I exhaled a shaky breath, telling myself it was just my imagination, just the house groaning under the weight of the night. But as my eyes adjusted to the sudden brightness, I noticed something I hadn't before. There was a mark on the door, a jagged, claw-like scratch, fresh and raw, running diagonally from top to bottom. My stomach churned. I hadn't done that. No one had been in the house but me. Heart pounding, I forced myself to move. I slid out of bed, my feet hitting the cold wooden floor with a shudder. The air was colder than before, thick with the stench of damp earth and something worse, something rotting. I wrapped my arms around myself, stepping cautiously toward the door. My hand hovered over the knob, trembling. Then, without warning, the scratching started again. Not from the door this time, but from inside the walls. Long, dragging nails scraping against drywall, moving from the hallway into the bedroom, circling around me like a predator stalking its prey. I spun in place, eyes darting between the corners of the room, searching for the source. But there was nothing, just the steady, rhythmic scratching, growing louder, closer. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. I barely had time to process the silence before the lamp flickered. Once, twice, then went out completely. Darkness swallowed the room whole. Something moved beside me. I felt it before I saw it. A presence, solid and oppressive, pressing against my side. I gasped, stumbling backward, but my legs hit the edge of the bed, sending me sprawling onto the mattress. The weight followed. It settled on top of me. Its form was impossibly heavy, crushing, as if 100 hands were pressing down on my chest, holding me in place. I thrashed, trying to scream, but my voice caught in my throat, smothered by the force pinning me down. The air grew unbearably cold, seeping into my lungs, freezing my thoughts. And then I heard it, right in my ear. Open the door. The voice was low, rasping, layered with something ancient and wrong. It sent ice through my veins. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing myself to wake up, to escape this nightmare. But I was awake, and the thing on top of me wasn't letting go. Desperate escape. I fought against the weight pressing me down, my limbs flailing uselessly as the entity's grip tightened. My lungs burned, struggling for air that refused to come. Every inch of my body screamed at me to move, to get free, but I was trapped, pinned beneath something that shouldn't exist, something that had waited too long to be set loose. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the pressure lifted. I gasped, sucking in a ragged breath as the darkness receded. The room was silent again, save for the frantic pounding of my own heartbeat. My hands trembled as I pushed myself up, my legs shaking beneath me. I didn't dare turn on the lamp again. I didn't want to see what might be waiting in the shadows. I stumbled to my feet, my pulse roaring in my ears. I needed to leave. Now, I grabbed the nearest duffel bag and began throwing clothes inside, my hands moving on instinct, barely registering what I was packing. I didn't care about anything else. Just getting out, putting as much distance between me and this house as possible. As I zipped the bag shut, a whisper curled through the air. "Don't leave." I froze. The voice was softer this time, almost pleading. "Stay? Open the door." "No," I muttered, gripping the strap of my bag so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Not again." I rushed to the front door, flinging it open. The night air hit me like a slap, sharp and biting, but I didn't hesitate. I ran. Down the porch steps, across the lawn, through the gate. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I reached my car in record time, fumbling with the keys, my hands shaking too hard to steady them. Finally, the lock clicked. I threw myself inside, slamming the door shut behind me. For a moment, I just sat there, panting, trying to convince myself I was safe. Then I heard it. A knock. Soft, deliberate, coming from inside the house. A lingering shadow. I tore out of the driveway so fast the tires screeched against the pavement, my hands clenched white-knuckled around the steering wheel. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the winding road ahead, but my eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror. The house disappeared behind me within seconds, swallowed by the dense trees lining the street, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me, waiting. I didn't stop driving until the sun began to rise, casting pale streaks of gold across the sky. My car rolled into the parking lot of a roadside diner, its neon sign flickering weakly in the morning haze. I killed the engine and sat there, staring at my reflection in the windshield. My face was pale, eyes bloodshot and rimmed with exhaustion. I hadn't slept, not really. How could I, knowing what was waiting in the dark? Inside the diner, I ordered coffee and a stack of pancakes, though I had no appetite. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Every time the bell above the door chimed, I flinched, half expecting to see something impossible standing there. But nothing came. Just tired truckers, early commuters, and the occasional lost traveler looking for a warm place to sit. I told myself I was safe now. The house was miles behind me. I had left it behind. And yet, the whispers hadn't stopped. They were quieter now, more distant, but they were still there, curling at the edges of my thoughts like smoke. I could almost convince myself it was just stress, just my brain trying to make sense of everything I had experienced. But deep down, I knew better. I had left the house, but whatever was inside it hadn't stayed behind. A house without peace. I haven't gone back. I won't. But sometimes, when the world falls silent and the night stretches long around me, I think I can still hear it. Not the house exactly, but something connected to it. Something that slipped through the cracks and followed me out into the world. I changed hotels 3 times in the first week. Every time I stepped into a new room, I checked the locks twice, made sure the windows were sealed, and kept the lights on all night. I couldn't bear the dark anymore. Not after what I had seen. But even with the lights on, the cold creeps in. It starts slowly, a subtle shift in the air, like the temperature dipping below freezing without warning. Then comes the whisper, soft, insistent, curling around my thoughts like a familiar voice trying to lure me back. I don't sleep much these days. I just wait. Wait for the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside my door. Wait for the creak of the floorboards beneath something that isn't there. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see the door. Not the front door of the house, not the one I fled through in terror, but another door, one I never noticed before. It appears in the corner of my vision, just out of reach. always slightly ajar, revealing only darkness beyond. I never step toward it. I never speak to it. But I know it's waiting for me to open it again. Echoes in the empty rooms. I don't know how many days have passed since I left the house. Time feels warped, stretched thin like a frayed thread ready to snap. Every night, I expect the knocking to start again, soft at first, then insistent, relentless. I expect the whispers to pull me back, threading their way into my dreams, curling around my thoughts until I can't tell what's real anymore. I avoid mirrors. I don't want to see what might be standing behind me when I look. But the worst part isn't the fear, it's the certainty. I know it's still there. In the house. In the walls. In the spaces between the floorboards. In the dust that settles in the corners. In the silence that presses against the glass of every window I pass. It never left. It never will. And I wonder, has someone else moved in yet? Has another soul wandered through that creaking front door, unaware of what waits inside? If they did, I hope they listen. I hope they hear the whispers before it's too late. The house remains. I can still see it in my mind. The crooked shutters, the uneven porch steps, the way the wind carried whispers through the eaves. I tell myself I escaped, that I left it all behind. But I know better. The house doesn't forget. Even now, when I walk through unfamiliar streets, when I sit in crowded cafes surrounded by strangers, I feel it. The presence. The pull. It's not chasing me. It's waiting. Patient. Watching. Because houses like that don't empty easily. They hold on to what they've taken. And sooner or later, someone else will open that door. The next tenant. I don't know who will move in next. Someone desperate, probably. Someone needing a fresh start, just like I did. They'll see the house for what it seems. Charming, quaint, a good deal. They won't notice the way the floorboards groan just a little too loudly. How the air feels heavier near the hallway. They won't hear the whispers, at first. But they will. And when they do, when they realize they're not alone, when they stand frozen in the dark, wondering if they're going mad, I hope they remember my story. I hope they listen.